Hello, everybody. So I've been kind of thinking about because it's like it's New Year's Eve, so here we are at the end of 2019, and predominantly today, most people are all over the world, not all over, but most of the Western world will be bringing in the new year rather, with excessive amounts of alcohol, and it's something that from a personal perspective, over the last 12 months, probably started about 18 months ago. My attitude and behaviour towards alcohol has changed massively, and of course that links to Lorne, because one of his downfalls, of which there are many, is his alcohol abuse. Of course, it's the reason he ended up back in prison, really. His failure to comply with those conditions. And that, with regard to what we're all interested in, and what the purpose of me going on YouTube in the first place was, the Lorneography kind of internet niche, shall we say. That what a big part of that is Lorne's kind of his kind of drinking has been well renowned before even with the chat log. It's sprinkled all over the Holy Lorneography. And he's continued to basically it's got me. It's a fascinating. I'm becoming increasingly fascinated by alcohol and humans' attitude towards it. We can use Lorne as a case study, which is what I wanted to talk about. But I've been, I think I'm in a sort of decent position to give a decent view on it. I've never been alcoholic. I've had alcohol problem. I remember probably 3 years ago, I had a bit of a not necessarily a beer belly, but definitely put weight on in the mid region. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and just going, just being repulsed and just saying, that's not good enough. That's not acceptable. I need to do something about that. But it was very difficult because I was in a position in my life where I couldn't imagine a life without alcohol. Someone said to me years ago, I was at work and I think it was one of my supervisors, who was a bit of a pisshead himself, to be honest, but a decent guy. We got on very well. He said to me, I can't remember what the question was, but we were talking about drinking, and I said to him, I'd rather die than stop drinking. Now, I think there was part of me, if not a big part of me, that actually meant that. I enjoyed alcohol so much that I just couldn't envision life without it. But I'd realised it wasn't the alcohol that I enjoyed. It wasn't that at all. It was what it actually caused me to do, or didn't cause me to do. And what it didn't cause me to do was think or overthink. I remember my sort of alcohol problem started at the end of a relationship, and I didn't know how to cope. So I'd come home from work, and suddenly I'd have an empty house, and the family that I had was gone. So I was like, shit. And I couldn't cope with that feeling of loneliness and loss and failure. I just couldn't. Oh, it was great timing. I couldn't cope with that. So the only option, and there's a bar very, within walking distance of where I live, and I knew a lot of people in there, and there was a bit of a social hive going on, a clique, if you will, because we were all into the same sports team. So I remember going in there, and there'd always be someone to talk to, always. So it would seem the most obvious thing for me to do. Right, okay, I'm feeling lonely, I'm not happy, I'm pissed off, I don't have anything to do, I've done my day at work, I've got money, let's go and drink and feel less lonely. And it would see it was like a necessary evil. And it's one beer, and you start to things start to change mentally. 2 beers, the overthinking that happens ceases, and you start to feel good because it stops you thinking. But you have to pay a price for that, and the price is you're lowering your level of consciousness. You become a fucking idiot, basically. Alcohol doesn't enhance you at all. It can give you an inflated sense of self-esteem, shall we say. But generally, in order to get there, you're not going to be particularly charming or insightful. Some people behave better than others. I'm not a bad drunk like Lorne may be. I have my moments, as we all do, but generally speaking, there are people a lot worse than me that turn into complete monsters. Alcohol does that. So it's like, well, what's the alternative? What was the alternative for me at that point in my life? And it's took me a long time and a lot of hard work, ridiculous hard work, to get to the point where I don't need it anymore. My life is better without it at all. For somebody like Lorne, right? He has got a lot more to deal with and he's even said it in some of the calls, hasn't he? He kind of, it's a way of him blocking out what's happened to him. It's the main reason why people turn to alcohol. It's, you see the people like in Manchester City Centre and you see them walking around all day, bums, if you want to refer to them. They are bums, basically. If you want to refer to any humans as bums, these people are. They walk around with the cans, consistently drunk, and that's how they get through life, and it helps them to live in a false reality. Like, if they're consistently drunk, they don't have to face up to reality. You're just permanently pissed. Of course, it's no way to live a life at all. Lorne has look at everything that he has to deal with. It's all in the past, so it doesn't have any reality to it. The realities for him are the restraints that it places on his, on his current life. You could say just be totally 100% present and not think about the past, which you don't have to. But that's difficult, very difficult for humans in our current state of evolution. We're at that point now where we're learning, we're evolving to the point where we're learning to control our mind as a kind of, as a timeline of where we are as a species as we're evolving. It's just, the civilized world has just been a tiny dot on a speck of a calendar. Do you know what I mean? It's unbelievable, really. I think it's really important that you step outside of the norm and look at that every so often and consider where we are. And you step outside of your normal life and just say, fucking hell, I'm part of this species. I remember I was driving home from the Trafford Centre in Manchester. It was like a huge shopping mall, as you call them in the States. And I remember driving over one of the bridges, and it was like night time. And as I was driving down, it's kind of a big bridge over a river, and there's like an aerodrome to the left and a train line that goes. And I remember just driving down the hill in this busy highway with all these amazing lights everywhere. There's a plane flying overhead, and then I can see the lights on a train in the distance. And I just had this sudden realization of like, what an amazing time to be alive. Look at all this. I've just been to this amazing shopping mall. I'm driving this fast as fuck car that's got a screen in front of me that's telling me what I'm listening to at the minute in writing, and I can click a button. It's just, I can click a button and listen to any song that's ever been released virtually at the click of a button, and it goes on automatically in my car and tells me exactly what it is. And I can, and I remember thinking, I'm flying away to like another continent in a few weeks. I just had this sudden realization of what an amazing time it is to be alive, and the benefits that we have now as living in the digital age and the modern world. there's an amazing amount for us to be grateful for, but we don't always appreciate it. And if you get stuck in, Lorne's world of drinking and all that kind of stuff, then, that you don't have a tendency to do that. It's crazy. And, if you think about it, right, in thousands and thousands of years, when historians are looking back, I mean, there'll be, there won't be like a classroom environment like there is now, but there'll be some kind of historic records or something along them lines. And can you imagine if they were like trying to figure it out and they go, what, they used to drink poison? Yeah. What do you mean they used to drink it? Did they know it was poison? Oh, yeah. And they drunk. Well, why? Why would they do that? Because it made them feel good. How does poison make you feel? How did poison make them feel good? Well, it stopped them thinking. Yeah, but it made them stupid, didn't it? Yeah, but it stopped them thinking. So they weren't able to stop thinking by themselves. No. But why didn't they just learn how to do that? Because it was easier to drink alcohol. Yeah, but it made them feel like crap. Yeah, I know. Oh, they weren't just that as well. They used to fight with each other. People would die. People would die of illnesses. People would die of injuries through fighting. People would get into stupid arguments, unwanted pregnancies, liver disease. They used to pay ridiculous amounts for these drinks. The government used to tax it. In the UK, it used to be like 50% tax, so they'd have to pay double. It didn't taste very nice. They'd end up putting weight on. They would just, can you imagine the enlightened person listening to that? Their jaw would literally be on the floor. Even now, like, what? It's fucking nuts. It's just crazy. We're all part of it. I mean, fuck me. My whole, in the UK, because I've, sort of been to a couple of other European countries in kind of non-touristy places, you get to realise what other people's attitude towards drink is and how it's different in different cultures. It's much, much better in Spain than it is in the UK. In Spain, they drink wine with the meals, their evening meals, and they're just very civilised about it. In the UK, predominantly, especially in Manchester, where I'm from, people just drink until they can't drink anymore, until they literally vomiting, until they completely bladdered. I used to do it in my much younger days, and they've got a much. That's kind of like when I retire, I want to live in Spain. I'm just, I don't enjoy the problem. Traveling's great because it broadens your horizon and opens your mind, but it also makes you realise sometimes just how shit the area that you live in. Even like when I was in Boston, I was in a couple of bars there. People are drinking, but they're generally having a good time. In Manchester, it's a lot more aggressive. But so you kind of like we look at Lorne, which is the the sort of purpose of this. Really, I just don't want to prattle on about my own life. Is what would it? Where would his life be without alcohol? It's interesting thing to theorize about. It's also something which is a bit silly, really. It's like, what if Kayla was real? Well, she fucking wasn't. You can't. But it's fun to speculate. So let's just say, I mean, now he's in jail, right? He might have got hold of some hooch through, incorrect channels. You never know, but it's unlikely. He's probably getting bullied. But generally, he'll get out, he'll start drinking again. He's inside. What's keeping him going is knowing that he'll be out soon. What kept him going last time was writing his lawsuits, and his frustration at how he's been victimised was the fuel that kept him going. If that was me in that position, I'd be depressed as fuck. But it takes a certain type of person to be depressed. You have to be a deep thinker in a lot of cases to be a depressed person. You have to, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it shows a level of introspection. Have I got that word right? And thinking within. Lorne doesn't think within. Lorne projects So everything is somebody else's fault. He's been wronged. I would imagine, given his rant that I was personally witness to in court, that the anger towards everybody else is still prevalent in keeping him going, basically. Because, he's like, I just want to do my cooking show, they won't leave me alone, all that kind of stuff. He's still blaming everybody else. It's the internet's fault. It's YouTube's fault. It's it's everybody else's fault, isn't it? He can't take responsibility. He can't. He's like just a packet of crisps blowing in the fucking wind. It's remarkable, really. It really is fascinating. That's why we're interested. One of the reasons why we're interested in listening to him is we can't quite grasp why the most simple of decisions are so difficult for him. And the alcohol thing, many people are in that situation where it'd be too... I don't know where I would have been without alcohol when I was going through a bad time. So for Lorne, if he was to just quit, let's just say he didn't drink when he got out. Let's just say, for whatever reason, he decided not to drink. Now, there is going to be... I can't go through them all one by one now. Actually, we can have a little look, because I've got them here on the court transcript. So, this kind of comes to mind a little bit here, how difficult it kind of is for him. And it's, rightly so as well, but the defendant is hereby committed to the custody of U.S. Bureau of Prisons of 6 months, blah, blah, blah. Upon release from imprisonment, the defendant shall be on supervised release for a term of life. Can you imagine that? Like, being sort of, something that you have to live with. That's, one of the reasons he drinks is to not deal with everything. It's a way of not dealing with the consequences of life, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's an easy way out of, like, I'll not have to come to terms with what I've done. I'll blame everybody else, and when I'm on my own or whatever, I'll drink, and then I don't have to deal with the ominous thoughts that would no doubt crop up in, well, you'd hope they would, There will be a part of him that knows he's a twat, you know what I mean? There's a part of him that knows everything he's done is wrong. He just chooses not to face up to it. The defendant shall also comply with the following additional conditions: shall participate in mental health treatment as directed by the supervising officer, until released from the program by the supervising officer. What we're interested in is the alcohol situation. The defendant shall not use or possess any controlled substance, alcohol or other intoxicant, and shall participate in a program of alcohol and drug abuse therapy to the supervising officer's satisfaction that shall include testing. Now, I think these are conditions that were pretty much the same before. He just obviously breaches them, which is why he went back to prison. 3. The defendant shall not associate with individuals consuming alcoholic beverages. That means he can't go around to Tony and Wendy's, so he's not supposed to. Shall not frequent business establishments whose primary product is alcoholic beverages. Fucking hell. And shall not use any medication containing alcohol without permission from the supervising officer. Wow. So he's not allowed to go to bars. He's not allowed to drink. Is the... let's just quickly... 4 is... may conduct a search of the defendant or anything the defendant owns, uses or possesses if the officer reasonably suspects. So it suspects is lesser than believes, so pretty much they can do what they want. The defendant has violated a condition of supervised release, blah, blah, blah. 5. The defendant shall participate and comply with the requirements, which... Right, I mean, there's no point going over it bit by bit, but basically, he's not allowed to drink at all, according to that, and he's not allowed to use the internet. So his life is going to be difficult. But in order for him, let's just say he was that something really bad happened to him when he was in prison. Let's not speculate on that too much, but let's just say something really bad happened to him when he was inside, and he decided that he couldn't bear the prospect of going back inside, so he decided to play by the rules this time and didn't drink. Can you imagine what his life would be like? I mean, it's just what he would have to sort of face up to. Even when he was outside, when he was, talking to Kayla, he'd drink as a way of escaping his reality. He mentioned it to Kayla, didn't he? He said that it helps me to... He sort of opened up to her at one point. It helps me to sort of block things out, which, like I said, that's what a lot of people do. So it's always been... When he started drinking, I think it's probably been mentioned in some of the calls before, but I don't know off the top of my head. But it's obviously been prevalent in his life for a long time. But the thing is... if you use alcohol regularly, I've noticed that true change isn't possible. True growth isn't possible if you drink regularly. It's like there's this guy I know in the local bar, and I don't go out to the pubs at all anymore. It was Christmas about a week or so ago, so I met my friend, and we were in the local bar, and this guy who I've known for ages, and he's kind of one of them. And every bar in the local area will have one of these people, and maybe where you live too. He has to tell everybody about his problems all the time. It's like, you go, "Oh, you alright?" And he's like, "No, not really, no, well, what happened were," and then he'll bore you with the details from his work, and then he'll tell you about his family drama. He uses alcohol and public houses, pubs, bars, whatever, as a means of offloading his problems to get stuff off his chest, and any poor unsuspecting person will feel that pain of his, because he'll project it onto others to lighten the load. He's an energy vampire, and it's basically, since I was last in there, I've gone through, because I don't drink. Very rarely. I'm going on holiday in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to be drinking every night, but I don't drink in the house, never have done, and I don't go to bars anymore to drink. And if I do, it's Christmas, or if I go out, I'll not drink. Doesn't bother me anymore. But with him, I've noticed changes in myself. I'm more disciplined. I'm a bit tougher. I still have shit to deal with. I mean, my backstory is pretty fucking horrendous. Not as horrendous as a lot of people's, but, I've got my cross to bear. And the stuff that, drinking, helps me to avoid it. But me facing up to those demons of mine over the past, whatever it'll be, probably last year or so, when I've not really been drinking at all, it's been an incredible amount of pain and suffering. A ridiculous amount. Like, sometimes you get this feeling of like isolation and loneliness, and you want to escape it. It's counterintuitive to face it head on, but that's the way to deal with it. It's the only way to face any problem, is to deal with it head on. So what I did on a number of occasions, I was like, I've not got the amount of friends that I used to have. I've kind of let a lot of them slip, but I've still got enough people around me that if things were bad, I could turn to them, or ring someone up, or go around someone's house, or something, And there was times when I'd be like feeling really shit, just like everything. Yeah, you have them moments where you think that like everything's against you. We always have that dark cloud hanging over us. And you have to try and wait for it to pass, but sometimes you think that it's never going to pass. So what I sometimes did when that cloud was hanging over me, rather than drink, which is what some people do to avoid it, or find some kind of pastime, maybe go to the cinema, go and speak to a friend, whatever, I used to meditate on that feeling and just go into it. So I'd feel the full force of that pain. And it seemed like the most ridiculous thing, but the most counterintuitive things are the ones that are usually the most beneficial. And, it's like getting up in the morning. Like, you wake up, my job now is regular hours. So I automatically wake up at 6 every morning, even when I'm not working. But when I'm not working at the weekend, I'll set my alarm for 5:30, half an hour earlier than unless I've got unless I'm away or I've got something specific on, and I'll go for a run of 10 miles or something. And it doesn't matter what the weather's like. If in Manchester, it's usually shit. It doesn't matter what it's like. And I'll set my alarm for 5:30, and I'll go for that run. And you kind of you're waking up and you know where it's cold outside, and everything's telling you it's crazy. What you're doing, stay in bed where it's warm. It's kind of counterintuitive to go outside and do that run, but yet it's the most healthy for me. It's ridiculously healthy. It's just the right thing to do. And it's the same with feeling, that feeling that you're trying to get away from, of loneliness or whatever it might be, whether it's bereavement, loss. It's counterintuitive to face it because it's danger. Well, no. It's part of life. Living is painful. We come into this life screaming, you know what I mean, in pain, and we generally leave. I mean, I don't want to sound miserable. It's the nice bits that you've got to appreciate in between. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? This is, I work hard and I've got responsibilities, as most people do. And it's tough. It's fucking tough. But you know what? I have things to look, I make sure that I'm planning nice things to do. It's like I'm going, on a mega holiday in a couple of weeks. It's going to be amazing. Them are the things that are worth living for. But in order to appreciate those, you've really got to go through the shit. So let's just say that I was out every night, having a good time. I could quite easily fall into that clique at the local bar again and hang around with all them fuckwits. And that's pretty disrespectful to say that to them, but they're not fuckwits. They're just stuck in that trap. But I don't have anything. I've realised I don't have anything in common with them anymore. And when I did go in there, it's all small talk and talking about politics and the weather. It's I'm not fucking interested. Do you know what I mean? That'd be the easiest solution to me, and I could probably, I could tap up some girl who's drinking or whatever, and form a new group of friends, and it'll all be based around alcohol, and you fall into the same patterns. But I'm doing it a different way, because generally, in most cases, you find out the way to live your life is find out what everybody else is doing and do the exact fucking opposite, because most people are stupid, and that's not, no, I don't mean that in an egotistical sense, but look at the planet as a whole. We are generally, as a species, pretty fucking stupid. The way that we behave and our attitudes towards everything, really. Consumerism and nutrition. We pump our bodies full of crap. We drink alcohol. That's what I'm talking about. So if most people are in the bar, drinking quite a lot and talking about football and who's the best left back and centre back, don't do that. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm going to go on holiday on this, it's across, it's thousands of miles away. It's on another continent. A couple of friends going. We've rented out this really cool apartment, blah, blah, blah. If I was out every night partying or whatever, drinking, and doing what some people would view as fun, the holiday wouldn't be as good, because the fact that I'm going to be drinking most of the time at night, I never drink in the daytime ever. It's just fucking, I know some people do, but I think it's pointless. It wouldn't be, the prospect of going out and having a drink at night is I'm actually looking forward to it. But it wouldn't mean as much, would it, if I was out doing that every night? And facing up to the pain that I have and meditating on that feeling of going through that pain is what makes the sweeter parts all the more sweet. It's like simple things like enjoying. Look at the picture behind the silly alcohol one on your screen where Lorne lives. If he could just quit the drinking, well, which he should do because he's legally obliged to do it unless he wants to go back in prison, he could enjoy the beautiful surroundings and find something to do. And it's been mentioned that he's quite resourceful. He can he can learn different things and doesn't put his full mind to it, but he can get by. He can find different jobs. He can, he had his business. We don't know the exact ins and outs of it. He joined the Air Force. He got a job driving. He's got a resourcefulness to him. So he could probably learn like to go hunting or to go fishing, or to find something in that beautiful area, or try and help other people. If he could face up to it. Now, granted, he's got a lot to face up to, hasn't he? If you think about it. I mean, is he going to be able to face up to the demons? My demons are not, they're all internal. It's not like I've not hurt anybody else. So he has to face up to a lot more. I think he'd go insane. Alcohol's necessary until you realise it's not necessary. It's a bit of a paradox. But he would have to deal with all these thought processes he's got, and his thought processes are very basic. They all avoid responsibility. They're all infantile. They're silly. He's an absolute mess. I don't think he'd be able to do it. If he was to sit there with the right guidance, but he'd need to see him a specialist around him all the time. He'd need, like I said, he'd need spiritual guidance. But he'd also need that one key element in all of this, which is that will to get better, that will to be better. It's not just a case of wanting the suffering to end, because the way that his suffering ends is through drinking. It's that will to, I've had enough of this suffering. I've had enough of this shit life. I can do better than this. But he won't. It's just not in his nature at the minute to do that. I think we've all, as living creatures, got that within us. All of us, every human being. We can go on to philosophical conversations about good and evil. That's maybe, I've touched upon that, and I know it's not my take on it is not something that everybody agrees with, which I understand. Yeah, but like he would have to face up to all of those things, and he couldn't. He couldn't do it. He can't find that will. Nobody's consciously suffering. Nobody consciously. It's unconscious suffering. It's not knowing. It's fear. It's really fear. We can overcomplicate these things, but ultimately it all boils down to fear. He's afraid of facing up to what he's done. He's afraid to facing up to who he is. And that all stems from, the fear all stems from a lack of self-love. I'm getting a bit airy-fairy here, but bear with me. You know what I'm like. That self-love was never taught to him. His dad, and the lessons that were given to him of the bunkie situation, I think the bunkie toy situation is something that I'm going to go into. I think that's really significant. It taught him to feel worthless, and that worthlessness has created this lack of self-love and this lack of self-respect. So he really doesn't fucking care about himself in a way. It's just an egotistical thing that carries him through. And his lack of self-love has created all this fear of not being good enough, of neediness, of not being connected with his true self. There's a tragedy there, but ultimately his challenges have always been the challenges that he's been given before he's started going in chat rooms are ones that he's had the ability to put right, and he's always made the wrong decision. But he did get off to a difficult start. He had a very difficult upbringing. He had no real role models. His siblings didn't care about him. You know, his mum was trying the best she could, and his dad fucked off and humiliated him. It's significant. It's something that we've got to acknowledge, you know. Like I said, I'm not trying to justify or enable him, as people have said. It's not about that. It's about understanding what created that mindset, what created that fear. And true understanding dispels evil. If you want to categorize people into good and evil, which you shouldn't do really, it doesn't mean that you can't identify bad things. It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't mean that you enable people. It doesn't mean that you don't combat bad things. But what it means is because you know, if you like recognize, if you run around and you recognize like that person's bad, but that person's good, they'll have their own views. It's a human value system. That's, you know, I'm not trying to say terrible people don't do terrible things, but it's a lot more complicated than is generally understood. That's the way I look at it. So, with regard to his alcohol, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be able to stop. And I say unfortunately because, like I said, a mentally well Lorne is a safer world for everybody. It's less money on the taxpayer and all that. You know, I don't believe in him suffering. Like, let's condemn Lorne to eternal suffering. I don't believe in that. But life is tough for everybody. Tougher for some than others, depending on various situations. But we shouldn't obviously pity him at all. Understanding is key. He's got the ability to do better, and he chooses. He's always making the wrong decision. Always. What's fascinating to me is, why does he keep making the wrong decision? What's the process behind it? You know, we can analyze it, and it can be very complicated, or we can trim it down and you know, look at the bare bones of the fact it's all fear. He's just afraid. It's ultimately all there really is fear and love. That's it. Everything else just stems from it. It's just a different variation of it. Anyway, I think I've gone on for too long about this now. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I just thought, like, alcohol's kind of role in people's lives is kind of really fascinating me now. It's like, for the first time ever, I remember I was out, like I said, I went out with a couple of friends the other day and I had a couple. And I spent most of the night, I had a bit of fun, you know, it was alright, but I spent most of the night people watching, looking at how people react and interact with people and trying to figure it out. It's like I've become so, like, analytical. I do know how to have fun, like, you know. It's almost like I'm watching a wildlife program when I go out and I'm like, you know, like, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? It's really weird how things have changed. But anyway, Happy New Year to everybody. If you are having a drink tonight, have a good time and, you know, be responsible, etc. You know, don't get online and say stupid things and whatnot. So, Happy New Year to everybody. I wonder what 2020 will bring. I hope it'll bring good luck to everybody who's listening, and you'll have a good time, and you'll bring in the new year with happiness. I hope that you enjoy my videos still every now and again, and I want to thank everybody for still listening and who comments on the videos. It's much appreciated. There'd be no point doing it otherwise. But Happy New Year to everybody, and I'll speak to you soon.